Chapter 1. Why rent when you could own? Tom had been sitting on the question since the night before. He'd written it in his notebook, then crossed it out, then written it again. When Leo and Priya arrived the next morning, coffee in hand, arguing about something unrelated, Tom was already at the whiteboard. The third option was still there, untouched, a cloud shape drawn by someone who'd admitted they didn't know what it meant. "I need someone to explain something to me," Tom said, without turning around. "If we rent computers from Amazon instead of buying our own, why would that be cheaper?" The room went quiet. It was the kind of question that sounds simple and isn't. "Because," Leo started. "No," said Tom. "I want to understand it, not just hear the answer. Why is renting cheaper than owning?" The obvious problem with owning servers. Imagine you decide to open a restaurant, not the Nimbus kind, a regular restaurant. Before your first customer walks in, you need tables, chairs, a kitchen, a stove, plates, staff. You need all of this on day one, even if your first week is slow, even if you spend 3 months with 6 customers per day before word gets around. Physical servers work the same way. If Nimbus buys their own servers, they have to buy them for the peak they expect, the busiest Friday night they can imagine, the viral moment where a food blogger posts about the arepa and 10,000 people try to order at once. But most of the time, it's not that busy. Most of the time, those servers sit there, using electricity, doing almost nothing. "We'd be paying for capacity we're not using," Maya said. "Exactly," said Tom, which surprised everyone because he was the one who'd asked the question. The rental model. Here's what makes cloud computing different. When you use AWS, you don't buy servers. You rent computing power, and you pay only for what you use. It's closer to renting a venue than owning a restaurant building. Think about it this way. If you need to host a birthday party for 50 people, you could buy a house big enough for 50 people and their tables and their chairs. Or you could rent a venue for 4 hours on Saturday, pay for exactly the space and time you need, and hand the keys back when the party's over. The venue is still there when you need it. It's available again when something else comes up. You didn't have to hire a building manager. You didn't pay property taxes for it all year. That's the cloud model. AWS has the venues. You show up when you need them. But wait, there's more to it. "Okay," said Leo, "but what if my venue burns down?" Good instinct. Dark, but good. One of the silent assumptions when you own your own servers is that you are responsible for keeping them running. If the server in your office gets knocked over by a clumsy intern, your website is down. If the building loses power, your website is down. If the hard drive fails, and hard drives always fail eventually, your website is down. AWS operates data centers, huge, professionally managed facilities with backup power, redundant network connections, physical security, and teams of engineers whose only job is to keep those machines running. You're not just renting computing power, you're renting reliability. "How much does that cost?" Tom asked. We'll get to that, many chapters from now, when Tom's eyes won't glaze over. 3 things the cloud does differently. Let's make this concrete. Here are the 3 core differences between running your own servers and using a cloud provider. 1. You pay for what you use. No server sitting idle. No upfront purchase. If Nimbus gets 0 orders on a Monday morning, they pay almost nothing. If they get slammed on New Year's Eve, AWS automatically has the capacity ready. 2. Someone else handles the hardware. AWS maintains the physical machines, the networking cables, the power supplies, the cooling systems. Nimbus doesn't hire anyone to do this. They focus on their application, not on the infrastructure underneath it. 3. You can scale up and down instantly. This is the one that takes a while to fully appreciate. With physical servers, scaling up means ordering new hardware, waiting weeks for delivery, setting it up. With AWS, scaling up means clicking a button or having the system do it automatically. And when you don't need the extra capacity anymore, you scale back down. You stop paying. Priya had been quiet during this explanation. She had a question. What about security? Who's responsible for keeping the data safe? And that's where it gets interesting. The shared responsibility model. This is one of the most important concepts in all of AWS. It's simple once you understand it, but it trips up a lot of people, including on the exam. AWS and you share responsibility for security, but each party is responsible for different things. AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud, the physical data centers, the hardware, the network infrastructure, the hypervisors that run the virtual machines. If someone breaks into an AWS data center, that's Amazon's problem. You are responsible for security in the cloud. Your data, your application, your user accounts, and who has access to what. The configurations you choose. If someone steals your password and logs into your AWS account, that's your problem. Priya nodded slowly. So they protect the building, we protect what's inside. Exactly, said Maya. So if Leo opens a port he shouldn't? Still our problem, Maya confirmed, looking at Leo. Leo was already typing something on his laptop and pretending not to hear. Strengths and limitations. No tool is perfect. Let's be honest about both sides. Why the cloud is great. No upfront hardware costs. Pay only for what you use. Scales instantly in both directions. Professional reliability and physical security. Access to hundreds of managed services, databases, queues, machine learning, and more, without having to build or maintain them yourself. Where it gets complicated. Costs can be unpredictable if you're not paying attention. Tom's future nightmare. You depend on a third party for your infrastructure. If AWS has an outage in your region, your service is affected too. There's a learning curve. Knowing which one to use requires experience or a book like this one. Data leaving the cloud can be expensive. Moving large amounts of data out of AWS costs money. We'll revisit this in Chapter 30. So we're trading control for convenience, said Tom. And trading upfront cost for ongoing cost, Maya added. And trading someone else's problem for our own problem on the security side, said Priya. But we're also trading Leo's broken server for Amazon's very not broken server, said Leo, who had apparently been listening the whole time. He wasn't entirely wrong. The cloud is computing power you rent instead of own. AWS is the largest cloud provider in the world. The core benefit is pay-as-you-go scaling. You pay only for what you use, and you can scale up or down as needed. AWS handles the physical infrastructure. You handle your application, your data, and your configurations. This split is called the shared responsibility model. The cloud is not always cheaper or simpler, but it removes barriers to starting, and it makes scaling possible in ways that physical servers can't match. Exam tips SAACO3 domain. Cross-domain cloud concepts fundamentals. The shared responsibility model appears on the exam regularly. Remember, AWS is responsible for security of the cloud, hardware, data centers, global network. You are responsible for security in the cloud, data, identities, application config. Critical nuance, the split shifts depending on the service type. For EC2, a virtual machine you control, you patch the operating system. For RDS, a managed database, AWS patches the database engine. The more managed a service is, the more responsibility moves to AWS. Exam scenarios will describe an incident and ask who is responsible. Always ask, how managed is this service? Questions about cloud benefits often test CapEx versus OpEx. On-premises hardware is capital expenditure, CapEx. Buy once, depreciate over time. Cloud is operational expenditure, OpEx. Pay monthly. AWS shifts costs from CapEx to OpEx. Elasticity, the ability to scale up and down automatically, is a core cloud benefit. You may see it paired with scalability on the exam. Elasticity means automatic, demand-driven scaling in both directions. Scalability means the system can grow, but doesn't necessarily shrink automatically. Exercises, Exercise 1. Recall. In your own words, explain the shared responsibility model. Who is responsible for what, and why does that distinction matter? Hint, think about Priya's analogy. Who protects the building and who protects what's inside it? Exercise 2. Exam practice scenario. A company is migrating its web application from an on-premises data center to AWS. The security team is concerned about maintaining compliance with their data protection policies. A new engineer asks, now that we're on AWS, does Amazon handle all our security requirements? Which of the following best describes how security responsibilities are divided? A. AWS is fully responsible for all security once the application is hosted in the cloud. B. The customer is fully responsible for all security, including physical data center security. C. AWS manages security of the underlying infrastructure. The customer manages security of their data, applications, and configurations. D. Security responsibilities are negotiated per account and depend on the customer's service tier. Think about what AWS physically controls versus what you control. Hint 2. AWS owns the data centers. You chose what to put in them and how to configure your application. Hint 3. We introduced a specific name for this division of responsibilities in this chapter. Answer C. Explanation. The AWS shared responsibility model divides security into 2 domains. AWS secures the physical infrastructure, data centers, hardware, and networking. The customer secures everything they deploy on top of it: their data, their access, controls, their application configurations, and their network settings. Why not A? AWS never takes full responsibility for customer application security. The moment you configure something, that configuration is yours to manage. Why not B? Customers are not responsible for physical data center security. That's precisely one of the advantages of using AWS. Why not D? The shared responsibility model is a fixed framework, not a negotiated arrangement. SAA CO3 domain, cross-domain, cloud concepts, shared responsibility exercise 3. Architecture challenge, optional. A friend is launching a new app and asks for your opinion. They're deciding between buying 2 physical servers, one for the app, one for the database, or using a cloud provider. Their projected traffic is 10 to 100 users per day, but they have a launch event in 3 months that might bring 10,000 users in a single day. Walk through the trade-offs. Which option would you recommend, and what's the main reason? What would you give up with your choice? There is no single correct answer. The goal is to practice thinking in trade-offs. Post-credits scene. 3 days later, Nimbus had an AWS account. Leo had created it at 11 p.m. using his personal email address, a credit card he'd had to borrow from Tom, and an enthusiasm that was, in retrospect, slightly alarming. I found something called EC2, he said the next morning, showing his laptop screen. It's like a computer you rent. I think I started one. You think? Priya asked. I definitely started one. He scrolled down. I just don't know where it is. Maya leaned over and looked at the screen. Leo, she said, why does it say Region AP Southeast 1? What does that mean? In the next chapter, the geography of AWS, where the servers actually are.